Hello, my name is Jacob Yunker, and I am the pastor of the Franklin United Methodist Church, located at 82 West Central Street in downtown Franklin, Massachusetts, and online at franklinumc.org. This is the first reading. On Sunday, February 14th, we will be wrapping up our reading of the Gospel of Mark. Our reading is from the end of the Gospel, Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they could go and anoint Jesus' dead body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they came to the tomb. They were saying to each other, "Who's going to roll the stone away from the entrance for us?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, and it was a very large stone. Going into the tomb, they saw a young man in a white robe seated on the right side, and they were startled. But he said to them, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He isn't here. Look, here's the place where they laid him. Go tell his disciples, especially Peter, that he is going ahead of you into Galilee. You will see him there, just as he told you." Overcome with terror and dread, they fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Now, depending upon the translation of the Bible you are reading, you may see that the story continues past verse 8. In both the Common English Bible and the New Revised Standard Version, it is noted that there are two alternative endings to Mark's Gospel. The original ending is found in verse 8, which we just read, but over time, two other endings were added, one short and one long. It seems that some scribes were uncomfortable with the women running from the tomb afraid and saying nothing to anyone. So they added to Mark's Gospel. Now, I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a date for the additions in my research over the next few days, but my Wesley Study Bible doesn't offer that information. The original ending can be problematic for some. If the women never told anyone what they saw, how did we get this story? Where did Mark get his information? How do we know the tomb was really empty? The two alternative endings provide some closure to the story and gives Mark a source. These alternative endings neatly wrap up the story with no loose ends. But personally, I like the cliffhanger ending of the original. It makes the story more interesting and calls the listener to action. As I read through the text this time, it occurs to me that Mark's Gospel, with its original ending, is cyclical. There is silence at the end of the story. The women run away afraid and don't tell anyone. It is as if Mark is asking, perhaps even begging, will there be a voice that breaks the silence? Will you, the listener, bear witness to the empty tomb, the resurrected Christ? Will you dare to call out in the wilderness like John did at the very beginning of the gospel, proclaiming the nearness of God's kingdom? The end of the story, as Mark tells us, leads us back to the beginning. As I ponder this need to bear witness to the risen Christ, I am struck by the women's fear. What were they afraid of? What are we afraid of? Why did they and why do we keep silent? What does it mean for us to get the word out that the tomb is empty, that Christ is risen indeed? These are a few of the thoughts and questions I'm wrestling with after this first reading. What thoughts and questions do you have about it? Write your thoughts, your questions, your comments, your spiritual profundities and doubts below and join me in the conversation this week. I hope you'll consider joining me and the people of the Franklin United Methodist Church in worship on Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time as we continue our reflection beyond this first reading.